Are we on? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Microphone check. Lights.
Cameras.
This is swanky. This is lifestyle. This is culture. Welcome to the social center of everything culture. Culture Daily.
You about 10-20 times and still will be fresh on your faces and on your minds. Lovely video there, and she bringing us 17 minutes past the hour 7. We are already spent time far gone into our conversation this morning, but of a conversation we had yesterday, very interesting one with our brother Kofi aka Beat Menace, who's back in the studio here because he sparked a very interesting part of the insights we were having yesterday, and we've taken the conversation into cultural policies. Now, it will surprise you that I'm sure you didn't even know that it is by government's mandate to preserve the identity, keep us informed and educated as Ghanaians, and preserve the identity and traditions of Ghana, or as Ghanaians. However, we look back into a lot of some of these things that are supposed to guide and guard, or these policies, and then you ask yourself the questions that are supposed to bring us up to speed if we are on the right track. We complain about our music, we complain about our tour sites, our monuments, we complain about our language not being a local language, not being at the forefront of us speaking them. But in other parts of the world, these things are at the top priority. This morning we are honored to have quite a number of people join us as well in this conversation on globalizing Ghana's creative industry. Now, the role of cultural policies. Kofi is here with us again. Kofi, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
And thank you very much giving us this hat trick, yet to be hat trick, because I have a funny feeling that we might pull you again tomorrow. Also to join us later on will be our very own Daddy Bosco. Just give me a second to pull this out. Daddy Bosco will join us on the show later on as well, and Michelle Mackenzie as well. I'll give you insights into all of them later on, but since we're waiting for them to join us via Zoom and get the link established, guys, ladies, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I want to start off with a very simple question, straightforward to us. Have we even before that, maybe there are a few extracts that I picked up from the culture policy of 2024, 2004 that I want to read out. Very interesting. Now, this is from 2004. I think the board members on there were, I want to read out their names so the members of the board of the National Commission on Culture as of 2004, we had Professor Hagan, we had Honorable Samuel Nkrumah Jima, we had Emeritus Professor J.H. Kwabena Nketia, we had Professor Anidoho, we have Professor Yanka, Mr. Kwao Ansa was there, Dr. Mrs. A.C. Sutherland Adi, Mr. Haruna Atta, Alhaji Abdullahi Bawa, Mr. Suyiri, Mr. Matonto, Ni Adoteo Board II, Nanama Sarah III, we had Miss Marigold Ekufu-Addo, and we had Reverend Dr. Mensa Otabil and Nana Kwame I hope I had the name right.
No, Kwame
Tre. I can't, well, pardon me, I apologize on that as well. But so let me read this extract to you real quickly, and I found it very, very interesting. It says here, it's quite a long document, so I had to pull this out. So, the objectives of the cultural policy of Ghana, this is for 2004. Number 1, to document and promote Ghana's traditional cultural values, such as those enshrined in 1, concepts of human dignity, 2, attitudes to nature and environment, 3, law and order, 4, honesty and truthfulness, 5, unity and peace, 6, self-reliance and dignity of labor, family, community, and national solidarity. It goes on to say, to ensure growth and development of our cultural institutions and make them relevant to human development, democratic governance, and national integration. These are all enshrined in this policy. Number 3, it says to enhance Ghanaian cultural life and develop cultural programs to contribute to the nation's human development and material progress through heritage preservation, conservation, Promotion and the use of traditional modern arts and crafts to create wealth and alleviate poverty. Underlined. Promotion and the use of traditional modern arts and crafts to create wealth and alleviate poverty. I leave it right here. In other parts of the world where Michelle will be speaking to, some of these policies have guided countries and has created and boosted the creative arts sector beautifully. Now we want to have that reversal effect here in Ghana. So this was a policy that was drawn as far back as 2004.
Yeah, and there were calls to have it reviewed, of which the UNESCO funded in about a couple of years ago, I think far back as 2018, and they revisited the conversation again last year and this year. And the new board members or the new committee set aside to do that are made up of the I just want to read out the names because you read out the 2004 names. So in 2023, led by our Deputy Minister of Culture, Tourism and Arts, we have Nana Jean Apainting. He's a communication, media and culture consultant. We have Professor Michael P.K. Ochenefo. He's at the University of Ghana, Legon. We have David Donto. Does Professional Acting and Film Institute. We have Chris Wecher. He is the Ghana National Commission for United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, definitely known as UNESCO. Then we have George Bosompim, and he is at the Ghana Academy of Film and Television Arts, as well as Ahuma Bosco Okanse. So these are the leaders out of a 20-member committee. Set aside or set by the ministry to look at the review of the 2004 culture policy, and I think the objective is very clear, and that is because since 2004 till now, a lot of things have changed, and so the review is to help implement contemporary practices. To position Ghana.
What things have changed?
So according
to
we want to bring in Michelle Mackenzie. She's on the line now. Kofi.
Today I've passed on the baton of firing.
I think we're passing the baton now. Michelle Mackenzie, she's the director for Urban Inclusion Community. Now she's joined us via Zoom. And now I don't know, you're going to say something.
I wanted to just respond to.
Okay, real quick before I bring Michelle in.
According to the deputy minister, he says that they are to examine successful cultural policies around the world and make recommendations that will shape the foundation and landscape of the industry in the country. They are also to ensure that the country's culture policy does not only reflect the richness of our tradition, but also embrace the potential for innovation and progress.
Could you go back to your first line? I wanted to take that off.
They are to examine successful cultural policies around the world.
Pause right there, please. We have Michelle on the line. Michelle, good morning and welcome to 3 Music.
Thank you. Good morning. Nice to be with you.
Nice to meet you as well. We're just sorting that image out on the screen. Please pardon us for those of you who are watching. But if you're listening to us on Plus FM as well, you can hear us loud and clear. Michelle, so there was a statement that my brother Olele just made, and he said that, please repeat that line for me again, Olele. He said...
the committee for the review of Ghana's cultural policy 2004 are to examine cultural policies around the world and make recommendations that will shape the foundation and landscape of the industry in the country.
What have been some of these success stories with regards to some of these policies that have, been instituted around the world in different markets? If you can just run us through some of them, just so we can relate or use that to look at how we can help shape ours here in Ghana. From your experience.
That's a pretty tall order. And thank you for inviting me. I've just joined the group, so I didn't have the opportunity to hear some of the comments that were made before. But if we think about markets, for example, in the UK, very different landscape, of course, but a very developed market in terms of the music industry and music opportunities, as well as infrastructure that meets the needs for those who want to participate in terms of not only being musicians, but also as technicians, in terms of venues, etc. There are a number of policies around the world which I think support the creation and evolvement of a music industry. So if you think, for example, in the UK and also in the US, as well as other parts of the world, one of the areas where there is a lot of focus is in music education, for example, and music education being critical as the starting point. I think a lot of us, most people enjoy music and most people associate music with social events. But there is actually, a real music sector, a real music industry that through music education, I think a lot of people don't appreciate how much music can contribute to an economy. So things like tax breaks, for example, are an important aspect of supporting the music industry. Tax breaks for music organizations, for institutions, and also even for parts of the industry that are just supporting programs, for example. So tax breaks are a really important aspect of a lot of policies that have been developed to encourage engagement in the music industry.
Just to bring So just to bring it home, can you give us an example of how some of these tax breaks can be implemented, and who will be the beneficiaries of such things?
Well, the beneficiaries are typically for the organizations that are working with music programs, and to give them an incentive, to incentivize them not only to be able to invest in music programs, but also to enable them to generate income and obviously have tax advantages in terms of doing that. So a lot of music education programs are supported in this regard, and typically through local government as well. The role of local government is really critical in supporting music education, employment, jobs in the music industry. And this is something that I feel really strongly about. We all know what typically economists need to support and to support a growing and evolving music sector. But education and training, I would argue, is actually the starting point. And this is where investment is really critical. That can be in terms of national policy, that can also be in terms of local initiatives and local governmental policy as well. So for example, in the UK, music education in the schools, which was also always a really strong feature of the general curriculum, for example, in UK education, over the years has been dismantled for the typical reasons, budgeting, etc. But what they've identified is that if you don't invest in music education from the point of, from those who are first exposed to music, and when I say music education, I don't just mean learning how to play an instrument, but all the additional aspects of music education, the fact that you need engineers, technicians, production, there's a whole industry. I think that exposure to music in the first place is really critical. And I would argue that that's actually something where policy has a really important role in terms of supporting both local governments as well as local communities to invest in initiatives that support young people in particular in gaining exposure to the potential of being engaged in the music sector. So these are just some of the approaches that have been taken in markets like the US, in markets like the UK. For example, I hear that in Korea, in South Korea, there's actually, a lot of initiatives, a lot of investment in K-pop, Korean pop, because they understand how that can be a means of not just engaging young people, but also in helping the sector to evolve so that it becomes a sustainable sector that can offer employment opportunities. So there are a number of different approaches and initiatives, funding and grants as well, local authorities that have the responsibility of ensuring that there is a music educational program in their schools, in their districts. So there are a number of different initiatives, as I said, in markets that are really developed like the UK and the US, but also further than that as well. And I think that's something that there's a real opportunity here to reinvest in music education, which will then give an opportunity for communities, for individuals, for private sector to see the value of music and to find initiatives and opportunities that can invest in that arena.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thank you, Michelle. So I wanted to find out why do you think it's become very important and very crucial for governments in the countries you mentioned, to invest in these sectors, especially with the creative arts sectors, because one would think that there's a lot of things they could, really turn their attention to and focus their attention to, but clearly there are structural programs and there are intentional attempts to, even though there are calls to reinvest or invest some more, there are, there are actions or actionables that show that at every point in time they want to see that creative sector thrive. So why do you think governments in these countries that you just mentioned are doing just that and not neglecting, quote unquote, neglecting the sector?
Well, I think most people enjoy music, and most people associate music with some type of social event. But I think what a lot of people perhaps don't appreciate is that music is a real revenue generating sector, both in terms of the investment in the domestic production of music, as well as the export potential of music. For example, in the UK, I believe, and forgive me if my figures are wrong, but I believe that in 2018, the UK, so this is pre-pandemic, the UK actually generated 6.6 billion in terms of the export potential, exporting music.
Wow.
Also bear in mind, that's a huge amount of money.
Wow.
And that doesn't even include people who travel to music destinations. That doesn't include people who actually go to the UK. I'm going to use the UK as an example. It's obviously it's an area that I have more knowledge around. So, for example, music tourism in the UK generates something like 2.1 billion in term to the economy. So music is not just about the social aspects of it. It's not just about enjoying music, and it's not just about performance. As you know, when we talk about a sector, there are so many other opportunities and avenues that are interdependent to create a thriving music industry. So I think that's really important that, not just governments, but cities, countries and cities, as well as government and as well as private sector understand that there is real potential to generate revenue through music. And I think that's something that often we underestimate. Think of the example of, I don't know how many of you have grown up in families or have families of your own, where you have, so for example, a child or a young person in your family who comes home and says, I want to be a scientist, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a nurse, and there's great applause. And then, you'll have them say, oh, mum or dad, I want to work in the music industry. Automatically, there is the assumption that, okay, this is not a serious career, this is not a serious ambition, you just want to get up on stage and perform. But no, not at all. The sector is so wide, and obviously the sector depends on everything from graphic designers to technicians, in terms of production, there's marketing, there's so many elements that actually make the music industry a revenue generating sector that can really contribute tremendous amounts of not just revenue, but also qualities that help us to have a better quality of life, both in terms of health and well-being, yes, in terms of education, but also in terms of employment creation. So I do think that it's something that governments do need to take on seriously. Ghana, for example, should, by all accounts, really be a music destination. But in order to be a music destination, it needs all these other elements to work together: infrastructural development, investment in education, opportunities for employment. There's huge export potentials in terms of diplomacy, in terms of events. So, yes, it is something that I do think governments and cities do need to take seriously and look at as real potential in terms of creating wealth and generating revenue, not only for communities, but also for the nation as a whole. So actually, I think it's something that's critical and is typically, unfortunately, overlooked.
Well, okay. So, just on your last point, where you say Ghana should actually, be looked at as a music destination, what do we give off that would make you, be strongly believe that this could be something that we could tap into heavily? Are there any signs we show?
Ghana has a long history of music. Ghana has a tremendous history in terms of music heritage. In fact, outside of Ghana, people who are interested in music, who have followed music, who are committed to music, are very aware that Ghana has contributed a tremendous amount to the music sphere. So Ghana as a music destination, which would be interdependent with infrastructure, with tourism. I mean, these are real potentials that are being overlooked. But you cannot, you need to invest. You need investment not only in this music sector, but also in all those accompanying sectors that are so important. So, for example, infrastructure. Let's think, for example, in the UK. Which I know is a very different landscape. But as I said, the UK is a music destination. And what the UK generates in terms of revenue, whether it be festivals, concerts, whether it be employment, whether it be programs, whether it be local community initiatives, all of these things, there are a number of different mechanisms that recognize the value of music and that also recognize the importance of investing in music. And it starts from the schools, but it's not only about schools. It's the schools, it's colleges, it's music academies. There's a whole heritage site. I mean, what Ghana has contributed in terms of music heritage, I don't think can be calculated. But I'm not sure that Ghana is typically harnessing that heritage to its advantage.
Well, you have really given some insights here. Let me just put you on hold for a second. Kofi, let me come to you because I see he's also been nodding his head on a few things, a few points that you've mentioned. Interesting enough, he also shared the same sentiments with taxation, creating some of these opportunities so that it will just thrive that business. Kofi, I don't know if you have any reactions to the things that Michelle has said.
Oh, well. It is what it is. I agree 100%. And I mean, I know Michelle pretty well. We have had a lot of conversations about creative industries and so on and so forth, over time. And I mean, a lot of the things she said, I agree with 100%.
Are we ready for this? It's one thing to implement these policies, and I think I'll throw that question back to Michelle later on, but to implement these policies, but it's another thing to convert these policies into actions.
Right.
Okay, Cyril is raising his hand, but...
The moment Cyril comes out in glasses...
Then I know there's fire.
Yeah, I don't see then we get a problem. But that's a very difficult question to answer, okay, because I feel we've been sitting on a ticking bomb for a long time, from a very long time. And Michelle said something that I'd like all of us to leave here with.
Okay.
She said we have a long history of amazing musical heritage. Okay? And it's always been the case. Ghana has been a destination for music for a long time. If you had people like Fela, if you had people like Mick Fleetwood or Fleetwood Mac, Ginger Baker of Cream, these were like the Drakes of their time, coming to Ghana for inspiration. I mean, that should say something, even the likes of, more recently, Wizkid, Patoranking, Davido, and countless other artists you've never heard about. Everyone comes to Ghana. So obviously there's something here that everybody else sees, but we fail to see or acknowledge. You know, so are we ready? Are we ready? This is a very slippery slope. Ready is relative. I think we would have fixed the problem if we wanted to. She touched on something that is super, 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 super dear to my heart: music education. Okay, I was speaking to older people, the likes of Panji. Panji said when he was a child, growing up, you know, he lived in Burma camp for a while. Even the most basic schools in Ghana, the schools that served very underdeveloped communities, had music education as part of the curriculum. At the very least, every child was given an atentemben. For those who don't understand, an atentemben is a bamboo flute.
I play that very well.
Really?
Till
The
days.
recorder.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, yeah.
everyone can afford.
Recorder.
Everyone can afford an atentemben.
Yeah.
If you can't buy one, you just find bamboo and you carve it to teach people the rudiments of music. And science has proven time and again that children who have music education, especially from the basic level, have faster and better cognitive development. So are we a nation that are spending money for free education and whatnot to raise idiots? That's a question I have to answer. I have to ask. As a matter of fact, I'm part of a focus group that started some research, and basically, so our focus group is a school in Tishi, a very basic school, and we picked 6 students, right? 5 girls, 1 boy, and the idea is to teach kids music and technology at the same time. Now, it was initially self-funded, still is for the most part. Recently got support from, very little support from NYU, New York University. But basically, the idea is to create culturally relevant topics or subjects surrounding music and fusing it with technology. So we are focusing on kids who have minimal or no access to computers or tech, and we're using iPads. I was with the kids for 3 months. At the end of 3 months, these kids recreated Camido's sugarcane on iPads.
Wow.
These kids are actually showing faster progress in studying other subjects. You understand? So yesterday we had a conversation about musicians, producers having very limited musical palettes.
Yeah.
So their ideas behind generating melodies are truncated, right? It's a very real thing. I'll give you a classic example. A couple of months ago, I was in a studio with an artist.
Yeah.
We're recording a song, brilliant song. He had this brilliant idea for a hook, and a friend and I said, you know what? Some parts of the material is a bit static. It's a bit formulaic. It's a bit. Can you add a little more melodic ideas to it to make it a little more dynamic? And for me to make this really easy for our viewers and our listeners to understand, in music there's something called scales. Okay, basically you have certain notes that in every culture around the world they have different interpretations of those notes or how they are expressed. But basically you have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Right? That's how many? Seven notes. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Then it goes again, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. So any song you can think about, any song you've ever heard, are a rearrangement of some of these notes in random orders that sound pleasing to the ear. Okay? Just these 7 notes. All the music in the world, 7 notes.
Yeah.
So we came up with an idea that the artist really liked, but the artist found difficulty trying to sing or replicate them. The artist found difficulty trying to sing or replicate those notes. So essentially, out of these 7 notes that exist, which everybody should know technically, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, in the artist's mind, they only knew maybe 4 or 5 out of the 7.
Wow.
They couldn't even reproduce the remaining. And trust me when I say this, a majority of our artists, our producers, suffer from this problem.
Kofi, hold it right there. Hold it right there. You when you spark you spark something else. Hold on right there. Just a second. I'm gonna go get back to Michelle in a bit of something you just said. But Daddy Bosco also just joined us. He's Director of Communications and Special Projects at Musica. Daddy Bosco, good morning, if you can hear us. Yes, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I hope you can hear me too.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much. We also have Michelle Mackenzie on the line. So, Daddy Bosco, I don't know if you are following on the conversation, but because you would probably have a bit knowledge into what is happening in Ghana as we speak with regards to this cultural policy. Where are we at now? We've picked up the conversation from 2004 as far as 2004, and now the review is being done. Number one, what constituted to this need for a review to be done, and possibly what has happened within that gap from then till now? Then thirdly, what are we looking forward to seeing in the near future with some of these cultural policies that are supposed to be implemented?
Okay, good morning, Jay, and good morning to Madame and my colleague, Pete Menes. I picked up part of the conversation, and I was really like, yeah, this is the kind of stuff passing my mind. And yes, you said policy was launched in 2004, and then with a lot of changes in the technologically, culture, it's dynamic, it's not static. There's the need to bring our cultural policy in line with current trend. That's what necessitated the decision by of Tourism, Arts and Culture 17.
Daddy Bosco, I think we're having a break in the transmission with yours, so we were going to just switch over to a phone line in just a bit. But if you can just please just hold on for us for a second while we just get this rectified to get the clearer audio. Michelle is however still on the line though, but Cyril, you're going to say something if I go to Michelle.
I just wanted to say I love the angle of the conversation, and I agree with Michelle and what Kofi has submitted. And my perspective on the issue is, let me give the analogy of the Ghana media space, or our economic space being a basin. Mm-hmm. And we are all agreeing that we need to find a way to funnel in the purest water, the clearest water. But while we are doing this with one hand, with the other hand, we have also allowed the media to be funneling in trash, which is all these contents that are culturally irrelevant, that are diluting our culture, that are corrupting the expectation of the consumer, mm-hmm. and that are making it easy for the creator to leverage on these trends that have zero cultural anchorage mm-hmm. to the Ghanaian experience. So let me bring it back to daily life. When we say cultural policy mm-hmm. for creativity and all that, it's not just about music. It's about we losing showcase in Akan, showcase in Ewe, showcase in Dagbani, mm-hmm. failing to find a way to modernize that, but shoveling any kind of telenovela onto any screen possible. That is one. Two, the events that are highly westernized, that mm-hmm. we could have extended and sustained homegrown events that started out great. Mm-hmm. Where is Kidafest? Where is Children's Park? Where are the things that we grew up with the inkling of creativity? Mm-hmm. The first time I ever hopped on the stage and felt I could do anything publicly related was at Kidafest, right? Without Kidafest, maybe I would have been that little shy guy still in the shell, not sitting here today. Mm-hmm. But these things are lost now. We started seeing the loss of these things the moment we threw away what was Ghanaian and started.
We open our borders to the influx
to everything.
These, yeah.
When we were in JSS, it was a big deal. When we only a few of us were listening to Lord Kenya and Obrafour mm-hmm. and the rest. All the other kids were listening to Dabrat and Deborah Cox because they mm-hmm. wanted to go and perform at Playback Show, mm-hmm. right? And at the time, it was trendy and it was cool. But that is you sidelining what is yours and consciously promoting what isn't yours to children who are highly impressionable. So this kid grows up from that aspect of an industrially promoted or an industry-wide promotion of foreign material and an industry-wide neglect of local material. And that's all we've seen extended today. Turn on your TV and tell me what inspires you to be a Ghanaian, want to be a Ghanaian, or can convince a parent that when their child says, I want to go into music, or I want to go into film, or I want to go into theater, it can be taken seriously.
Okay, hold on. Cyril, I want to ask Michelle this question that you've just put up. That Michelle, are you still there if you can hear us?
I'm here.
Are there any, because you play also well both in Ghana and the UK markets, are there any such intentionalities in a place like the UK to instill some of these cultural disciplines in them? Are there any properties or assets that you see constantly, that are guaranteed that right from childhood, a British would adopt the real cultural ethics of being British, our identity?
Oh, that's interesting. As you know, the UK is actually one of the most diverse nations actually in the world. So the notion of cultural music heritage is very broad. It's very broad. What music education does is it allows one to put one's own specific cultural narrative into play on the platform, on the landscape. But it also means that, in terms of music education, you understand that there is a lineage. Let me use another word. There's a heritage of music that everyone can contribute to. So when we start talking about specific cultural agendas, and so typically we are talking about music heritage, music archiving, music preservation, then yes, these things are absolutely critical, because this is what gives the individual, whether it be being first introduced into schools, whether it's going into music academies, whether it's learning music for oneself and learning music through actual performance. These kinds of agendas. What music does is it brings people together. So I don't particularly think that by introducing other styles, other agendas, other narratives, that one is watering down the essence of one's own musical cultural heritage. But what I do think is important is that people have a historical understanding of the value of their cultural musical heritage, how that contributes to even our appreciation of new styles, the introduction of new styles in music. I don't particularly think it has to be about traditional music versus modern music, because everything actually has its place. And to be honest, it's all part of the same narrative. It's just coming from different influences. But I do think that if one is to feel that there is value in their own specific cultural musical heritage, then this needs to be reflected. And this needs to be reflected in terms of policies, in terms of how music is integrated into our lives, whether those be urban lives, whether those be non-urban. It's really, really important that people understand that music isn't just about performance. Music has economic value. All music has economic value. And the narrative will change based on different generations, different individuals, and the different influences that they bring. So I don't think that we should go down the route of pitching one style of music against another style of music. But what I do think that we should do is have a holistic and overall view of the value of music in so many regards. I mean, let me give you a very quick example. In the UK, people always assume that there is so much money that is invested in education in the UK, and typically there is. Music education was something that was invested in terms of the curriculum. Every school had a music department. Most children, and I'm sticking with music education because I think it starts from there. It starts from our exposure and awareness of the value of music. So in terms of learning an instrument, most kids at school, including myself, we learned to play, some people call it the flute, we called it the recorder. very basic, a very basic musical instrument, which of course, if you really studied it as a discipline, could evolve into being a flautist, and other styles of music and other musical instruments. However, over the years, again, for the same reasons, due to budgetary considerations, music programs have been dismantled in UK schools. However, because of now they recognize that in dismantling those programs, that actually it's impacted on learning, it's impacted on development of cognitive skills, it has impacted on ambitions for young people, in terms of not just as performers, but in terms of the whole industry around music, whether it be in terms of design, etc. Right now, there is a new initiative, a report, a plan, let me put it that way. There's a national plan to reintroduce music programs into the schools. Why? Because I think that there was a certain level of arrogance after a certain while in the UK that music would just somehow happen and evolve, and that there was no need to actually have a structured way.
Okay, I think we're trying to re-establish the connection there. I think it just went off. But Daddy Bosco, please, we have you on phone now. Good morning again. Can you hear me? Okay, we're still trying to establish a connection there. After these rains, you always get these problems.
Yeah.
We implement policies that will help cut off the rain, and then. but let me just come back in house. So whilst we try and get Daddy Bosco on the line. Okay.
What I was saying is
fire.
We have only one platform, which is our radio and TV, for mass dissemination of our creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Internet is secondary, even though it has now become the mainstay. It doesn't penetrate everywhere across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And we have consciously neglected these two platforms, radio and TV. And how do I say it? Saturated it with content that is of no cultural relevance to the Ghanaian. Now, let's go back to the 60s or the 70s, or even maybe, 60s and 70s, where Ghanaian radio had radio dramas that instilled those behavioral characteristics, that communicated via various languages, that provided morals, that provided entertainment value. Those same radio dramas came with music, right? When it was translated to TV, we all know the theme song for Showcase.
Cyril,
right?
There's something you
okay,
people.
Guys, the Bosco's on the line because of the phone. Let's pick from him. This is hey, the two of you. Daddy Bosco again. Good morning. If you can hear me. Can you hear me, please? Oh, today is a very bad day for us on telephone.
What I'm just saying is, the reason why everybody takes the shortcut of let me pay $25,000 for 5 seasons of some telenovela from Venezuela and put it on TV is because it's the shortcut to earn advertising revenue. But if you invest in authentic homegrown content, you create a whole ecosystem that, if you are patient and disciplined enough to sustain the time it takes for these things to materialize, you would have created a whole ecosystem that will be making you eons more than the quick buck you are getting today. And that is the problem that we are currently facing in Ghana. Our problem is not that the landscape is there and we are not maximizing it, or there's no content to fill it. The problem is that we have reduced the landscape to a consumption-only landscape. So you turn on radio, right? And apart from the 5-6 artists that we know, that we even promote in this country, there are artists who are still in Ghana, who are begging for promotion, who don't get the airplay they need, don't get the interviews they need. But Drake gets a running stomach, and we know.
Cyril, hold it right there, please. I beg you.
You get what I'm saying.
We get it.
We don't have a conscious effort
Yeah.
to promote, because if we said we were promoting Ghana music,
Yeah.
we will never run out of it.
Yeah. And yesterday, Kofi said something very brilliant with regards to, if certain radio stations or media houses were given tax, tax cut exemptions just because they were being original and they play more local content. Hold it right there for me. Kofi, I'm coming back to you on that. We have a good 10 minutes to go on that. But we are signing up from Plus 89.9 FM this morning as well. The conversation still goes on. However, on Facebook, the stream is still there, and you can also join us on visual on TV, on 3 Music TV as well. Have an amazing day if you are on Plus 89.9 FM. All right, please, Michelle is back on the line. Kofi, I'm coming back to you with a good solid 5 minutes, so please hold on for me, just so we can wrap it up with Michelle. Michelle, please, if you can hear me. So I asked a question to Kofi as well about our readiness for this. It is one thing to set these policies that would, get these things on the ground, but understanding the character or the behavior of the Ghanaian, and I don't want to call it a beautiful chaotic mess that we find ourselves in because of lack of infrastructure, finances, and all those other things. Understanding identity. Are we really, really, really ready for this? And have you engaged any policymaker of any sort? And what has been the feedback like?
Look, I think there is definitely clear intentions, and there's an understanding of the value and potential of music. And I'm thinking purely from an economic perspective that, yes, how music can contribute to GDP, how it can contribute to exposure for a country, trade agreements, exporting diplomacy, all these various aspects in which music can help with the engagement. But intention. You cannot create policy, you cannot develop an infrastructure, you cannot create initiatives, projects, programs, etc., until you have a real understanding of your landscape. And I would say, in terms of intention and intentionality, one of the most important things in Ghana is actually mapping the sector. It has to start from who, what, where, when. What's here? What are the needs? Where are the activities, initiatives needed? You have to map the sector. How many musicians do we have? What is the sector actually providing? What is the potential to marry the sector with clear initiatives that will support tourism, support Ghana as a music destination, will help to will help private and public sector invest in venues, invest in infrastructure. We know that all of these things are necessary and are interlinked. One of the examples that I wanted to give, for example, was like in the US, and I can't remember which state, but it's easy to look up, where they have an initiative where actual music graduates are some of the teachers that go into the schools to share music education. That's not dependent on funding. That is dependent on intention. But before any of these things can be addressed, the most critical thing for Ghana and for actually any country and any city is to map. What are the needs of your sector? Who is already engaged in your sector? What resources are available? What are the kinds of programs, initiatives, etc., that are necessary? What's going to help evolve the sector so that it becomes a positive contributor to the economic landscape? So I would say intention has to start from knowing what the issues are and knowing what you're facing. And that has to be a mapping of the sector. So Urban Inclusion, we are also on the board of directors for the Music for Ecosystems, which is an NGO that deals with the music industry on a global landscape, providing tools for governments, for communities, to help to develop policy that will support the music sector in their specific countries, cities, communities. But before anyone can make any of those strides, it's important to understand the landscape. Understand the landscape in terms of what's been inherited, understand the landscape in terms of what's needed to help evolve and develop the sector, so that we can all start to enjoy the fruits of having a developed and a nurtured and a strong music sector that actually contributes, not just in terms of revenue, but in terms of jobs as well, in terms of employment. Until we have a real understanding of what the challenges are in the landscape and what the intentions are for developing that music landscape, then we are shooting in the dark. So I would say the most important aspect of any of this is mapping the sector.
Michelle, I would have to bring it to an end here, but thank you so very much on these insights, and also thank you so very much for joining us on such short notice as well. Really, really appreciate it, and we'll definitely have you join us more to give us more insights. Michelle McKenzie is Director for Urban Inclusion Community. Join us in a conversation this morning on globalizing Ghana's creative industry, the role of these cultural policies, especially in the music sector. Thank you so very much. Let me come in-house to our guest. Yes, thank you. Let me come in-house to our guest as well. We'll still try and get back to Daddy Bosco real quickly. We have about 3 more minutes to go. But Kofi, I'm dropping this onto your onto your laps again. You are making a very fair point. I don't know if you can go back to it.
When Cyril was talking about, I think he made reference to the 60s and 70s and talking about content. A lot of things happened that a lot of us are not probably aware of. We even had mobile cinemas that used to travel to the most remote places to not just educate or entertain people, but to ensure that there was a certain level of equality, so to speak, when it came to dissemination of content.
Shared consciousness,
exactly. When today's session began and Olile was reading, all the directives, of the previous culture policy, I nearly burst out laughing because that was just intellectual gibberish. How does that tie in the real world to sort of weave the very fabric of everything from media to fashion? It goes beyond music. Are you guys aware that a couple of years ago, a Chinese entity sort of trademarked or took control of the motif that defines our kente patterns? It's not owned by Ghana, technically, legally.
What are you saying?
Because over time, Ghanaian business people, they go to China to create the printed kente fabric as a cheaper alternative to the woven one. And because there was a high demand for it, these people realized that, no, there must be something important with this design. Right now, the Ghana government, in the last few years, have been trying to fight to get control. It's just pitiful. It's sad.
We also don't own Ghana chocolates. You forgot I put that on the screen already. Ghana chocolates.
So technically, we don't own kente. We were all on, online a couple of years ago, and we saw Valentino, the high fashion Italian design house, create their spin on our Ahinima slippers, and all of a sudden we wanted to claim it.
We're angry,
and we're selling it for what, 1,500 euros. So it's not just about music. See, a lot of people, Ghana just has a very low glass ceiling. Okay, innovators just get clipped. They can't get past. So over time, we have built and enriched other people's cultures. Yesterday, I think it was Cyril I was texting a couple of days ago. The late Kofi Ganaba, some of us would remember him, this guy who would play the drums and whatnot. He is part of the rich jazz tradition of American jazz music. He was the first African to be signed to a major label way before Ghana attained independence.
53.
He was playing local instruments. Before he switched to local instruments when he was in Ghana, before independence, he was the co-founder of the Temples Band that we often attribute to E.T. Mensah. Big band, high life, right? Now, if you go to any university in the world to study jazz and you move to drums as an instrument, you'd learn about 5 drummers. Okay? One of them is a guy called Max Roach. Another is a guy called Art Blakey. Max Roach was a student of Kofi Ganaba. Kofi Ganaba, or at the time he was known as Guy Warren, was the one who taught him the idea of polyrhythms. That's why you have jazz, you have them playing on the tom-toms and whatnot. One more thing.
Yes, finish it up for me.
To the big Bob Marley fans.
Start our conversation for tomorrow for me,
For the big Bob Marley fans, on some of Bob Marley's seminal recordings, you would see all the horns attributed to GEP horns. It's been hyphenated. George Lanyo Lee, Eddie Kwanzaa, who is still alive, he's in Australia in his 80s. And a guy, I think Peter Vanderpoy, they were Ghanaians. They played in bands in Ghana. When they couldn't get past a certain level, they had to leave. to define the music.
The hat trick is on.
Right.
The hat trick is on.
Fry plantain and the two beans.
The hat trick is on. Kofi, the hat trick is on. The hat trick is on. Unfortunately, we couldn't reach through to Daddy Bosco that we're having challenge with our network. Challenges with our network. Apologies. And he also apologized to us. So we would definitely try and get him back into the studio to have this conversation. It's very interesting. We're not done with this hat trick conversation. We're done yesterday, today, and very likely tomorrow. But before we go real quickly, don't forget $5,000 is waiting for you to be won. Easy. Just jump on mayeko.com right about now. There's a lot to do there. It's a social impact crowdfunding platform that has also teamed up with non-profits to raise funds for essential projects. And also don't forget to brush your teeth day and night with Pepsodent Cavity Fighter. It gives you 10 times stronger teeth because it's fortified with pro-fluoride and microcalcium ingredients that will seal tiny holes in your teeth. Today is Wednesday. Still more games we played on star 959 hash at Dawonsem 590 mobile they call it. Your likeness and chance to win big is on that platform. Go and play it. Star 959 hash. You can play that game right about now. And on that note, our time is up. We're back again tomorrow. I want to say a very big thank you to Michelle McKenzie as well for joining us on the show. Kofi, thank you so very much. And to you, Daddy Bosco, and to our team in-house making it possible. And to you, the fans as well. We're back same time tomorrow right here on Culture Daily. We out.